So with Hip Over 50. So if you follow my channel, you know that although I have an American accent, I was born here in England, and this is my story about coming back here to live. So I read an article that kind of got me intrigued. Apparently, British style is making a buzz over on the other side of the pond in the US. And it got me wondering, what is it about the British aesthetic that is so enticing to Americans? Well, for example, the American designer Ralph Lauren, who has always brought us his version of classic English style, Americanized, has set up a hospitality suite at Wimbledon featuring some fabulous British pottery and other things. So he's an American who really understands the British aesthetic and has always had a love affair with it. And I think the British aesthetic is, well, it instills that feeling that we want to dress up and look very feminine as well. Those ruffles on the shirts, or masculine. I mean, what man doesn't want to dress as if he's about to dash off on his horse to fight a duel? And I think that's what Ralph Lauren really taps into for Americans. Is of course, wearing the clothes doesn't make change your life, but it can feel like you're enacting a little bit of British style on American shores. I mean, remember Laura Ashley? Gosh, in her day, that romantic floral style was massively popular in the US. I mean, everybody wanted either one of her pretty dresses or some of her lovely bedding. It just epitomized sort of the English cottage lifestyle. And we snapped it up, didn't we? Those romantic florals have come back in a big way on both sides of the pond, I think. As we celebrate, I think we want to celebrate those simpler times and dress once again as if all we have to do is go out for a stroll and perhaps have some afternoon tea. Of course, here in Britain, that could very well be the truth because we do that all the time, right? So I think maybe it's the Queen's Jubilee, the Platinum Jubilee, which was a big to do, and of course the Queen's funeral, and then the King's coronation has maybe it's reminded Americans of their heritage and reawakened a desire for a little bit of their own British legacy. I mean, after all, they estimate anywhere from 25 to 34 million Americans identify as having some British ancestry. So it's no surprise that anything British is seems a little bit familiar. Seems a little bit, yeah, that's part of my heritage too. Why wouldn't you want to embrace it? I mean, let's talk about Downton Abbey. That was massively popular in the US. I know I used to watch it, and I still do if it comes on. It's kind of soothing in a way to see that sort of upper and lower class life as led at that time, that era when everything was still, you kind of knew where you stood, you knew who you were, and you knew what was expected of you. Another example is I was taking a walk the other day through some fields with a friend, and I noticed this brand new stone wall being constructed in the style that's been done for hundreds, if not thousands of years. It's called stack stone, no mortar or anything. They just stack it all up and it lasts forever. And I think those ways of doing things properly with care have never gone out of style here in England or in Britain. And I think it's why the British aesthetic is so appealing to Americans because they like that timeless style. They like the fact that, yeah, this is a tradition. This is something we're still doing. I think the British way does appeal to our need for romanticism. And obviously, like I said, something that is even more important now. We want to escape a little bit. And coming here or being reminded of British style is being reminded of a time when there were castles. I mean, there's over 4,000 castles here in the United Kingdom. And, when things like duels were fought, life was a little simpler. It may have been tougher, but, like I said, it was very romantic. And that's how we look at it. It may not have been romantic if you were living in it at the time, but it is. That kind of thing is still going on here. I mean, yeah, no, we're not having duels and fights, but those castles, that architecture, that whole British aesthetic of things being timeless is very appealing. And I think, even things like railroads, there's still, you could still go on a steam train for a ride here. There's all kinds of, everything from the crown jewels to priceless artifacts in the British museums. I mean, we really revere our traditions, our treasures, and our history here. And I think that is very appealing, especially to a newish country like the USA. I mean, we've invented all kinds of things here, not just the railways, but rock and roll. The Beatles, the Rolling Stones. There's sort of that, you know, enigma of what is British style. I think Americans just can't get enough of it, and especially the accent. I think, after all, the best craftsmanship, tailoring, Savile Row suits are considered some of the best in the world, and design. Like I mentioned, world famous music like the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, to name just a few, all the way up to Adele today. Fine literature from Jane Austen to Shakespeare. And then you splash in hundreds of years, if not thousands of years of history. I mean, it really creates a very rich culture. And that aesthetic is emulated and admired all over the world, not just in the US, because there's something very comforting about it. Like I said, it speaks to a past time when life was a little simpler. It may not have been easy, like I said, but everybody knew who they were and what was expected of them. Oh, to be Lady Mary for a day, right? She had that perfect life. She could do no wrong. She always got away with just about everything. I think it's a simpler time of life, and I think we would all love to have a little, pass on Downton Abbey for a day. I mean, from fashion to interior design, everything is hitting the American shores, and British style is really big right now. I think I read that it's really kind of creating a new buzz, some new designers, and we've had a lot of influential designers come from these shores. William Morris is one example. He's having a renaissance. I mean, people are recognizing how truly timeless these designs are, and they're starting to say, yeah, that is something I want to bring into my home now because it still looks fabulous. I was in Colorado when I first heard the House of Hackney, and they are now synonymous with those fabulous floral, very big, over the top sort of wallpapers that have become very popular. That floral, botanical, whimsical English aesthetic is front and center when you want to convey timelessness. I mean, all the truly great architectural styles and garden designs, they sprang from British soil. Some of the most famous garden designers in the world, Capability Brown, are British. So why wouldn't you want to emulate centuries of exceptional design and art? It is very covetable. And so while you're wearing your hunter wellies, mucking about in the garden, perhaps you're playing tennis in your Wimbledon whites, or dashing down a lane in your little antique two-seater, perhaps you're taking afternoon tea. Well, all of these British traditions evoke a way of life that is still very much alive in England and the UK, but has pretty much vanished in the US, if ever, because in the US, traditions kind of get cast aside. And I think that's why Americans kind of love coming over here. I think it's why they fancy the pants of our British aesthetic, because it reminds them of a time when being honorable was admired. Everything was done to a high standard. Mr. Carson had his ruler out, right? The very best in all things was appreciated and patronized. Only the very best would do, and that's why it's still standing today after hundreds and hundreds of years. These castles, these homes, when life is lived to the fullest, and still is, quite frankly. We do enjoy ourselves over here. I mean, on a lazy sunny afternoon, sit under an umbrella, time can stand still. You've got a gin and tonic or perhaps a pot of tea in front of you. Doesn't get any better. And that feeling is really difficult to emulate in the US, but it epitomizes the British aesthetic. And it's why Americans can't get enough. So those are my thoughts. I'd love to hear yours in the comments below. And of course, I really appreciate you watching, as always, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Bye for now.